So launch sales are in for Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee in Japan, and the numbers are beyond impressive. Now, there's going to be some naysayers out there that are going to point out some stats, and I'm going to explain why to try to dismiss Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee. I think mostly just because they want it to fail rather than what reality of the situation is. So, without further ado, here's the sales. According to Media Create, it sold 661,240 units. Now, this is significantly smaller than pretty much all of the other recent releases dating back to 2013. So, like Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon last November sold 1.2 million. Back in 2016, Sun and Moon sold 1.9 million. Back in 2013, X and Y sold 2.1 million, and these are all launch sales over 3 days in the similar time period. And Omega and Alpha, they sold 1.5 million. So obviously, 661,240 doesn't look good. It doesn't look good compared to the main series of games. And this is where a lot of people are extrapolating. Ergo, 661,240 units is actually really not that great of sales, and proof that Let's Go Pikachu, Let's Go Eevee is not a popular concept, and ergo will be going away and will just be a one-off game. However, if you dive deeper into the numbers, you start to realize something that maybe others aren't noticing. Now, here's the first stat. According to Media Create, Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu, Let's Go Eevee is the second best launch of a game in Japan in terms of sheer number of units sold. The highest launch was 665,000 units of Splatoon 2, according to Media Create. That gives it a 4,000 unit edge over Let's Go Pikachu, Let's Go Eevee. So we all know Splatoon 2 is huge in Japan, and Let's Go Pikachu, Let's Go Eevee actually sold just a smidge lower than that. Now, the more interesting part of that is obviously that Splatoon 2, most people consider that a system seller, right? Well, it only moved about 58,000 units during its launch week. Switch sales, 200,850 units last week. 200,850 units, making it the fourth best week of sales in Japan in the entire Nintendo Switch's history. The only weeks that were better, were launch week, and then the 2 weeks of the holiday period last year in Japan, which their holiday sales spiked big in December, whereas over here we spiked big in November heading into December. So they had 2 weeks in December last year in the middle of their holiday sale season when they sold more units, and then launch. Besides a holiday period and launch, this is the best a game has ever moved Switch units, period, outside of launch window and holidays. That should let you know how big the demand is for these titles. Now, beyond that, because we also talked about the UK sales earlier, how they sold about 116,000 combined. It seems a little less, but if you dig deeper into the numbers, you realize 116,000 was the max amount of Pokemon Let's Go games that were actually sent to the UK, so they basically sold out and were not able to actually exceed those numbers. So if they had enough stock, we're not really sure where the numbers would have sat. Would they have been a little bit higher? We assume so, but how much higher? Only a couple thousand higher. Would it have been 40,000 higher? We don't know. What we do know is for these Japan sales that we need to dig deeper than just looking at the sheer 661,000. Because believe it or not, that 661,240 units equals about 12% of the current Nintendo Switch install base of 5.5 million. Now, why does that matter? Well, Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu, Let's Go Eevee is the first core, mainline, whatever you want to consider it to be. Maybe you consider it a spinoff. Some people call it a spinoff. I don't consider it that. They called it a core game, so I'm at least going to stick with the core game title. It is the only core Pokemon game title, one, to launch at $60 a pop, so $120 for both games, plus I have a $100 bundle at launch with a Pokeball accessory. So again, it's one of the most expensive launches in history. And two, it is the lowest install base ever a Pokemon game, mainline core Pokemon game, has ever been launched to in Japan. They have never been close to only having 5.5 million units of a platform available in the country at the time of a launch of a major Pokemon game. It's never happened in the history of Pokemon. So let me put that 12% in perspective here. Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon sold 1.2 million, right? But that was against 24 million 3DS install base in Japan. That equals to only 5% of the actual 3DS audience in Japan that picked up Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. Let's dig even deeper. for Sun and Moon, right? One of the biggest launches in Pokemon history in all this long time in 2016. 1.9 million during launch, but that was only on a 22 million 3DS install base. What does that equate to? 8.6%. How about Omega Alpha, right? Omega, Sapphire, Alpha, whatever. Like Omega Ruby, Alpha, Sapphire, I believe. Sold 1.5 million. It is by far the most popular remake of all of the entire group. 1.5 million. But there were 16.6 million 3DSs installed. What does that equate to? 9% of the audience. Now, the impressive game, the one that really shone in Japan, was Pokemon X and Y. It sold 2.1 million back in October of 2013, and that was on a 3DS install base of 13.3 million. That did equate to 15.8%, one of the most impressive percentages of games sold to consoles owned in Pokemon history. So X and Y is kind of like the gold standard. Well, Let's Go's at 12%. That's higher than Omega, and Alpha. That's higher than Sun and Moon. That's higher than Ultra Sun and Moon. That's higher than Black and White. And Black and White 2, it just isn't higher than X and Y. So, in perspective, 12% is pretty damn good. Now, some people are going to argue, well, even if you double the install base of Switch, it doesn't double the sales of the games. Well, of course not. But we're not talking about doubling. Look at those numbers. The lowest we saw was X and Y at 2.1 million with 13.3 million Switches in the market. Well, if you double the Switch units up to 5.5 to 11, that's still 2.3 million short. Well, does that mean that it would have sold 2 million units? No. Does that mean it would have sold, 1.2, 1.3 million units? No, but could it perceivably, if it had 13.3 million Switches on the market, hit 1 million? Yes. Yes, it very well could have. So you got to remember, the sales are held back for a number of factors. Price, and the fact that the install base is smaller. Even still, it is the first title to single-handedly sell Switches. Now, think about this. We talk about system sellers, right? Octopath Traveler rose sales a little bit, Splatoon 2 rose sales a little bit. Mario Odyssey rose sales a little bit. Literally nothing rose sales like Pokemon. This is the definition of system selling. And we're not even to the highest sale period in Japan for the holidays. So chances are there's going to be a decent tail of sales here that is going to make Pokemon become a multi-million seller in Japan. Now, obviously we know the UK sold out. I don't think there were sellouts in Japan. I think they actually had more than enough from what I'm able to gather from people who live in Japan. But I'm kind of looking out towards the future because the next big area for us to get updates from is going to be right here in the United States. Now, yes, by the time we know that, we'll have 3 to 4 weeks of data on Japan because they give us weekly updates. And by then, maybe Japan's at 2 million, 3 million, whatever the case might be. But I'm really impressed with these sales. And I think you guys should be too. Think about it. 12% of the install base in Japan during launch, bought Let's Go Pikachu, Let's Go Eevee. And the only game to do better than that percentage-wise compared to the number of systems on the market was X and Y at 15.8. Nothing else is really even close. Not Red and Blue, not Gold and Silver, not Black and White 2, none of those games. Pearl, Diamond, none of them pulled off. Well, Let's Go Pikachu, Let's Go Eevee did with this install base. And none of them actually released on such a small install base. This has always been one of the weird criticisms, right? Like, we always talk about how Pokemon is a system seller, right? Like, it sells systems. Inarguably, people buy systems to play Pokemon. But Game Freak has always waited until there was already a significant install base to release their games. And this is the one time they didn't wait, right? They did not wait for Switch to be at 30, 40 million units like they did for, like, DS and 3DS and all that stuff. No. They came out pretty much as early as you could possibly do without being a launch game. And it is selling phenomenally well. I bet you Nintendo and Game Freak are overjoyed with these sales. Now, again, the long tail of sales are really going to be telling. We know there's a new gen next year, which will probably limit the long tail of sales for these games. Usually, there's a couple-year period for games to sell, but because there's a new generation, Let's Go Pikachu, Let's Go Eevee could see its sales dwindle when the new gen hits, or maybe because it's kind of its own thing, it'll keep selling anyways in addition to, and remember, they are $60 a pop, so profit-wise, the profits are way up on these games. for Nintendo and for Game Freak. But yeah, overall, Let's Go Pikachu, Let's Go Eevee has done phenomenal so far, and I can't wait to see what the sales updates are over this holiday period, because this is the week, baby. This is the week. It's going to be hard to find Switches by the weekend. Anyways, folks, I am Nathaniel Rufflegents from Nintendo Prime. If you like this video, you know what to do. Why don't you go down and enter our Nintendo Switch giveaway. We're giving away Super Smash Bros. Ultimate Nintendo Switch. Gleam.io link to enter that, absolutely free. You just have to be subscribed to the channel, and I'll catch all of you in the next one.